tonight.
We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
Traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion. Over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Flag could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over. Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Smiles Lewis, and I'm your host on Anomaly Now, live straight out of Austin, Texas, on this March 29th, 2023. And I thank you so much for joining us. This is the weekly live news roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives Scientific Anomaly Institute, headquartered here in good old Austin, Texas, in the United States of America, on the northern continent, northern hemisphere of this weird ball of dirt spinning and hurtling through the void that is space. It's not really a void, but you know what I mean. So much news to cover tonight. We hardly ever get the chance to get through the lengthy material that we have available. For those interested in learning more about us, you can go to our website, anomalyarchives.org. That's ANOMALY archives.org. And we've been in existence since our founding in 2003. So yes, this is in fact our 20-year anniversary. And you can find all kinds of links to content. Our semi-regular email newsletters get posted there. A wealth of background material on our nonprofit and its activities, links to our YouTube channel where so much material is available, past lectures and events, videos of events, and our wonderful 50 plus hours of content from our 2020 Streamathon fundraiser, and much, much more. And there's going to be very much more, much soon, very, very soon. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday night. Why Wednesdays? Just real quickly, of course, if you are new to this, you may or may not be aware that good old paranormal, ufological, demonological journalist John Keel once crunched the numbers of all the UFO weird cases in his database and determined that it appeared to his data and his eyes looking at that data that Wednesdays seem to be the predominant time for strange happenings, particularly UFO sightings, trending towards Thursday, he alleged. And I've not seen really anybody verify this in the years since he wrote about this in one of his many wonderful books back in the day. But why not? Wednesdays, there we go. Not my worst Wednesday night. So what's on the agenda for tonight? Well, we'll be, of course, posting the links to stuff that we cover in the show notes for this broadcast, no matter where you're listening to it or watching it. We do a audio-only version of it that comes out through the podcast channel. But the main archive for it, of course, is our anomalyarchives.org website. There is a subsection there under video where you can go to Anomaly-NOW and see past episodes there. Of course, then there's our Anomaly Archives YouTube channel, which I believe is something as simple as youtube.com/Anomaly Archives, all one word, no spaces. And so that's where the vodcasts reside. And then we crunch it into an audio-only version that goes out over the podcast ways. But we also stream this live, and thus it's archived at various other locations, though some of them don't archive it. Anyway, Facebook, our Facebook page, and Twitch and Twitter also. We stream through there. And gosh, I don't know. We're probably going out other places that I don't even know about. So through our anomalyarchives.org website, you can find links to our Flipboard, and that is our online magazine. It's basically just a bookmark list that shows you the different links that we have put together. And there is always just a ton of stuff there. These are just some of the things I'm scrolling by that we might cover tonight. Oh, I'll just mention, I just watched this How Advancements in Prosthetic Technology Allow Feeling Control on a segment of 60 Minutes. I'm easily moved to tears. This moved me to tears. And it reminds me of the work of the nonprofit that I have been involved with over the years, Institute for Neuroscience and Consciousness Studies, and their interest in making brain machine interfaces. And it's happening. People who have lost limbs are now regaining their ability to feel, not just to manipulate a robotic arm or leg or hand, but to feel through it. And that is astounding and is a game changer, I know, for so many people. But again, you can go over to flipboard.com / Anomaly Archives. There's a longer part to it after that, but you can look around and you'll find it. But some of the stuff that we're going to cover tonight, let's start with the UFO stuff. That's my passion. And sure enough, longtime UFO researcher Kevin Randle has a blog, kevinrandle.blogspot.com, called A Different Perspective. He also does a occasional vodcast of his own that I think he posts on Rumble. And he also there's an audio version only of that podcast as well. And this article that he's done a few days ago, 3 days ago, should we investigate decades old cases? You hear this a lot now with newbies or people who have really jumped on the UAP bandwagon. It's rebranding of the UFO to UAP acronym. And it's just this idea of, well, stop looking back, let's look forward. And to some degree, I get this because, I've often said, we don't need to necessarily keep collecting UFO sighting reports. I think we should, but the point is we've got so many already that there's a ton of data to work with. And while, yes, we should continue to collect this data, it's not necessarily my thing. I'm glad that there are people doing it, and there's people doing it with new technologies that's really innovative and awesome. But a lot of times there's this refrain about, why are we even bothering with these old cases? And I think Kevin argues very persuasively in this article about the benefits of that and how much more there is to be discovered about some classic cases. And so he goes into detail about the Socorro landing and the fact that besides the single witness of Lonnie Zamora, the policeman who witnessed beings next to a landed craft that then took off and shot away into the distance, that there were reports from other people before that. And these were in some of the official Air Force reports. And guess what? Were not talked about. So there's, again, this evidence of seeming, just dismissal or, dare we say, cover up of important aspects of cases that would have lent more credence to them. He goes on to talk about the Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker abduction from 1973, and how, again, he's never been Kevin Randle is very much dismissive of the abduction phenomenon. He thinks there's something there, but that it's not necessarily what he's most interested in terms of UFO close encounters or sighting reports of UFOs. And he's actually very much an adherent of the ETH extraterrestrial hypothesis, but he doesn't give much credence, or at least he tends to have a more dismissive, down-to-earth perspective on abduction cases. But he's still not convinced about the Calvin Hickson, Charles Parker, Charles Hickson, and Calvin Parker case. But as it turns out, there are others that have come forward since then, and that give a little bit more credence to that, even in his book. And something that I think is very good and demonstrates his work in this area is this book here. If I can get it to display. Oh, no, I can't. It was displaying, actually, it's up here on right. Right there, the Leveland book, an in-depth examination of the events in Leveland, Texas in November 1957 and the evidence about electromagnetic effects. This is a very important aspect of the UFO phenomena that we don't really hear about in quite the same way as we used to. But, and that in and of itself is very interesting. But he talks about there is documentation suggesting that Air Force officers were close enough to see the object rather than a streak of light. And if Clem, the witness, if Clem's car was stalled by the close approach of the UFO, then the Air Force car was, he doesn't say this, likely stalled by the close approach of the UFO as well. Think about the importance of that revelation and what it would mean to the Air Force investigation if that information had been available to us at the time of the sighting. It would be impossible for the Air Force to claim that ball lightning was the culprit. Or if ball lightning can shut down cars, that's pretty important in and of itself. And maybe they have a reason for not suggesting that. Maybe they discovered that such plasma balls have non-lethal weaponry benefits. Who knows? But this is just one of the things that he talks about in this article. I highly recommend it, and we'll put the link in the show notes, as we mentioned. Meanwhile, so remember those balloons that got shot down, or those UAP, unidentified flying objects, or whatever the heck they were, that crazy weekend a few weeks back? Well, there was another probable balloon over Texas just recently. And sure enough, it appears that they routed surveillance aircraft into the area to monitor it, and it moved around and flew out over, I think, the Gulf of Mexico. Is that image not going to load? I guess not. But the tracks here they put on of the aircraft and the tracking of the alleged apparent object. I don't believe they ended up shooting it down, but if memory serves, yes, they mentioned that John Greenwald of the blackvault.com received an outright denial of his Freedom of Information Act request on national security grounds for any video or imagery taken of the object. Now, this is referring to the weekend of the 3 shoot down mystery objects. But again, this most recent object over Texas and the Gulf of Texas appears to likely have been what I think they call it a hobbyist pico balloon. Is thought to have possibly been at least one of the 3 still officially unidentified objects. I think in this most recent case, they also think that was the case. So yeah, whoop-de-doo. But it's the context within which we are going forward into this weird UFO UAP world, such as it is. Let's move on to, okay. I know last week, where is this? So I've got this link from the militarytimes.com, which is not, as far as I know, a official military site, but the headline here is about Tucker Carlson. I played something or alluded to a recent broadcast of his where he was talking about some of the more sensationalistic claims that Valet has asserted in his book Trinity. Let me see if I can get this to play. It's very short here, folks.
We got a call from this guy who's a tenured Stanford medical school professor. He comes on and he's like, 11 years ago, the US government reached out to me because I'm an expert on head injuries, on brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries. And they had all these court cases from families of US servicemen, over 100, who'd been killed by UFOs. The Department of Defense was refusing to give them death benefits or medical benefits. And he's like, so they're in the courts. And I was like, there are over 100 servicemen killed by UFOs? Like, what? He's like, yeah. And there are court cases about it. I'm like, why isn't this on the front page of the New York Times? I don't know. And in a number of cases, these things have landed on military bases, including famously in Germany, in West Germany in the 70s. And servicemen have approached them. And they approach and they get traumatic brain injury or they're killed. And he studied their brains.
Okay. Now, whatever you think of Tucker Carlson, the story, what he's relating is something that has been percolating through the UFO community for some time. And obviously it's been long suggested that there are health effects to close encounters with UFOs. One of the most famous cases like this being the Texas Cash Landrum case, wherein 3 people came within close proximity of an apparent diamond shape, conical shaped UFO spewing fire that then became encircled by multiple, some say up to, I think the witnesses estimated up to 23 Chinook helicopters. Now, Chinook are those double-bladed, massive troop and equipment carrying Army military helicopters that are just massive. I actually saw two fly very close to my home just in the last few days, and it is an intense experience in and of itself. 23 of those seems impossible, and of course that's what the military's response was. That's impossible. It was like Christmas Eve or thereabouts, and there's no way you could get all the pilots to fly those things. And plus, we don't have that many available or something like that. But these witnesses reported health effects. Now, obviously, the refrain is incredible claims require incredible evidence, or extraordinary claims, etc. I don't necessarily subscribe to that idea, but it's good to try to get verifiable information. And so the person I believe he is talking about is Gary Nolan. That's Garry Nolan, and not an uncontroversial figure himself. It's either him or Kit Green. It's hard to determine because both have been associated with these claims of this apparent medical group examining close encounter witnesses. But it's Gary Nolan who, you can find multiple sources, has talked publicly to some limited extent about this alleged connection to brain injuries of close encounter witnesses, military personnel encountering UFOs and whatnot. Though he himself, I believe, or maybe again it's Kit Green, I forget exactly, but it's detailed in this very long article by friend and researcher Jack Brewer at his UFO Trail blog. That's ufotrail.blogspot.com. This article's from last year, the UFO injury study that wasn't. It's very long, as it says there. It's got a link to a PDF version, but it's a very interesting read. I actually haven't quite gotten through it all, but and there's a picture of Kit Green, who's another person associated with this claim. It's a very shadowy claim, and I have sources who have actually attended lectures or presentations by, I believe, Gary Nolan about this, but there's a lot of unanswered questions, and it's definitely something I think is worth continuing to pursue and try to verify if true. And some of the details that I have come across in reading Brewer's investigative article here are that there appears to be some kind of shadowy medical group that has done that takes blood of these close encounter witnesses, including Jim Semivan. Yes, the alleged apparent former CIA operations officer who took part or was one of the original founders of the Tom DeLonge to the Stars Academy, and has continued with his association with Lou Elizondo to mount this massive PR campaign for the UAP, the need for transparency, secrecy, and disclosure by the government and the military about UAP related matters. So hopefully want to dive into this more deeply very, very soon. But I think this is a great example of where, the many shadowy people in the UFO field, and in this case, who I actually do consider to be insiders. And I would put my favorite UFO personality, Jacques Vallée, in that category, except that he's tended to be on the outskirts of it as a third-party contractor, as opposed to, say, a CIA officer or a military man, working for a particular nation's government. But nonetheless, these people are insiders. They have really hobnobbed with the hoi polloi, if that's the right word, within these big institutions that are our government's military and intelligence apparatus, and have been involved in various secret, covert programs, and they are certainly need to be held accountable for the claims they make, and that's of course what Brewer is trying to do here is hold accountable these people that like Gary Nolan and others who are making significant claims that, you know, one wants to take them at face value and believe them, but it's sometimes good to ask a few confirmatory follow-up questions to verify. And I'll just leave it at that. But I think this is a good example of where that doesn't, where that needs to happen, and where folks like Tucker Carlson end up running with it. Now, that wasn't on his own show, though. Obviously, he has been having a lot of UFO type shows on his, or UFO type subjects and guests on his show. Similarly, I discovered this article from, of all places, wholecows.com. And what is it about? The cattle mutilation phenomena, and in a recent spat of mystery deaths in Colorado from last year, around circa October. So there's really not much. This is just really a reposting a link to a much better, an actual article. But notice the discount here. If you, for a limited time, you can get 15% off your beef order. So this is some kind of beef wholesale or meat wholesale type website that I believe is owned probably by the right-wing pundit J.D. Rucker, who has also reposted the same article over at his other website, NOQ Report, and I'm not really sure. I think it's news opinion and quotes report.com. But yeah, you can search for information about JD Rucker, and he definitely is a more conservative right-wing personality who has a lot of different websites. And if you look at sites that try to be like Snopes or other fact-checking sites, they rate his stuff very, very low. Now, and again, it's what they say here is pretty much just that it's there's already these problems challenging ranching and the beef industry. And how do they phrase it? Attacks from globalist elites, corrupt government officials, and climate change cultists. Add in supply chain challenges, the energy crisis, untenable water policies, and oddly prevalent diseases hitting herds. And it's clear that the cattle industry is in no shape to be burdened with anything else. So no, not some mystery creature that leaves no tracks and is killing our cattle. So what article does he link to? Oh, it's an article from the debrief. Actually, I think he's linking to someone else's link to the debrief. I'm spacing on that. Oh, I thought I had that link open. Okay, well, so the debrief article, though, is excellent, and I highly recommend it. It's by a friend and hardworking journalist, Micah Hanks, and he of course writes for the debrief.org. And this excellent article from a few weeks ago, March 13th, on the trail of an unseen killer, questions linger over unexplained cattle deaths in Colorado. This is not that kind of clickbait, low value article or blog post, really, like those other two references that I was showing you. But that's what led me. I hadn't actually seen Micah's extensive and well-researched, explained article that goes into great detail about this situation. And it covers all the bases. The fact that there is this mystery death of, I think it's somewhere between 20 and 40 different animals across a 13,000 acre area. And the experts, the wildlife people, of course, are looking at to see if there's any evidence of predation. Is this a matter of prey animals, coyotes, or wild dogs, or some other animals causing the deaths of these cattle. And there do seem to be some evidence, but nothing that strikes them as definitive. And so they go to great lengths to say it's not wolves. But of course, the people who are really pro reintroduction of wolves took this as an affront to their activism and efforts, and struck out at them for suggesting that it was wolves, when in fact they were trying to suggest that it was not wolves. Though there are significant efforts to reintroduce them in the works. So here's a map showing the multiple locations of these different deaths in the Meeker, Colorado area last October. Anyway, it's an excellent article. I do hope that we might actually have Micah on sometime soon to discuss it. He interviewed a lot of the officials involved in this effort to identify the culprits, and he goes into just great detail here. It's a really well-researched article. Definitely learned a lot myself, and I believe there was also a reference. Yes, another series of samples tested by the Texas A&M Veterinary Medical Diagnostic Laboratory yielded similar results on October 21st, 2022, indicating, quote, no microscopic lesions in the tissue examined that explain the cause of death in this animal. As this person is quoted, this is frustrating. Initial assessments made by district wildlife managers and wildlife services staff said there were multiple injuries consistent with wolf predation. I've seen some of the photos. I understand why they made that assumption. However, there is no other supporting evidence. So it appears to be a mystery, and they're looking at actual disease-borne factors that I was not familiar with. That apparently can affect cattle and cause them to drop dead. So very, very interesting. It goes off in a lot of different directions that seem far afield from traditional research into UFOs and the paranormal. But again, mysterious animal deaths, particularly mysterious cattle death, is a long time area of fascination since the 1970s. And he, of course, goes into briefly about that. So. Well, what else before we continue here? That does cover a lot of what I wanted. On a more pleasant note, let's see if we can. So I saw this headline. The Northern Lights could dazzle the skies from Washington to New York on Friday, blown by winds from a giant hole in the sun. This article over at businessinsider.com from about a week ago. Got me primed. I'm like, oh, wow, that would be really cool if the Aurora Borealis could be seen in lower climes, lower latitudes. And sure enough, what should come across my Facebook feed? But let's see. These photos by Wesley Luganbeal. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Auroras in Texas caught them northwest of Amarillo, Texas. Had perfect conditions as there was no moon and no clouds. Went from none to a full horizon in about a minute. It's been over 30 years since I've seen them in Texas. This is pretty fascinating. Except that the picture is not as big as I was hoping I could. Oh, here we go. Is that better? Well, so here's just some of this person's photographs of that. I've never seen the Aurora. I just would love to see something like this. That's to me, that's pretty amazing. So meanwhile, the other more positive news that will probably end on, if I can get this to work. Let's see. Oh yes. So let's do a little cryptozoology roundup. No, not any. I'm sure there's always some kind of new video of alleged Bigfoot or some other cryptid. But the other part of cryptozoology, of course, is just undiscovered animals or rediscovered animals or out of place animals. And there are always reports of those. But here we have from over at livescience.com, watch 2 megamouth sharks caught on video for the first time ever. This is pretty amazing. Just that this would finally be caught on video. And I think I can get this to play. I don't think there's any audio. Or is there? Oh, yeah. Oh, it's just music. Anyway, just encouraging to see some rare creatures recorded. And meanwhile, let's see. This article over at theguardian.com, Tasmanian tiger may have survived into the 2000s. New analysis suggests. For those of you not familiar, this is an image of the presumed still extinct Tasmanian tiger, the thylacine. But interesting new research suggesting that it actually lasted longer than originally thought. And this one it's always amazing to me when amateurs are noted with accomplishing the discovery of creatures. And so we have British tourist spots 3 species thought to have been extinct. This one from over at msn.com or via the Telegraph, actually, but or from the Telegraph via msn.com. And on a 4-week holiday in Papua New Guinea, Michael Smith, 51, spotted a Luisada pita not seen since 1916. Oh my gosh. And a family barbecuing a Telefomin couscous, which was feared extinct after a 1997 forest fire killed the oak trees where they live in the Nong River Valley. Comes 4 years after the hobby botanist found and photographed the Wandiwoy tree kangaroo in the region, which had evaded adventurers and zoologists since a first and only example was found in 1928. Again, just glad to hear about new stuff like this. And oh, goody. Meanwhile, over at the University of Texas, we have, oh, no, it's auto playing. No, hold on. Let's see if I can get this to go back to the beginning, and here we go.
UT researchers have discovered a new species of ancient beaver, and they're naming it after a popular road trip stop here in Texas. It's called the Anchitheriomys bucky. Yeah, that's a word, or a bucky for short. Researchers named it after the popular convenience store Buc-ee's after seeing a Buc-ee's billboard that said, "This is beaver country," while working on ancient beaver research. A team of Texas paleontologists originally collected the A. bucky skull in 1941, but a museum curator who planned to name it passed away before he could publish his findings.
Oh.
Scientists recently published a paper about the skull and millions of years worth of beaver history in Texas, and finally gave the species its new name. Ryan, I want you to say the species name.
I'm not going to do that. No, I'm glad you had that read.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for our March 29th, 2023 edition of Anomaly Now. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, you can go to anomalyarchives.org for all the back issues, back episodes of this podcast and our other content for the nonprofit 501c3 Anomaly Archives here in Austin, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week, and there's more content coming very, very soon. Good night.